or Councilman Cashman, forgive me. Did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's good to be here, and it's good to see so many people interested in what we can do to make the Evans Corridor a better people mover, better corridor to service local businesses, and hopefully we can make it a bit more attractive along the way. My former colleague, Councilwoman Black, and I pushed for this study for 5 years before we finally got it on the books. And I'm looking forward to working now with her successor, Diana Romero Campbell, who's Councilwoman for District 4 to the south of Evans. So thank you, everybody, for participating. I think we're going to end up with a great study moving forward.
And I believe Councilperson Romero Campbell is on the line as well. Okay. If not, we'll come back. Okay. So why are we here? Let's do a quick project overview just to kind of set the stage. I know we've got folks who've been involved in this in the NPI and the previous work, so we won't belabor the point, but what is this project? Why this project? How did we get here? Why are we here today? Where are we in the process? In other words, what have we done so far? And then the best part is getting that feedback from you guys. Next slide. What is the project? Well, you all are very familiar with the Evans Corridor. If you don't live along it, you drive it, you use it to get from here to there. This project is a 12-month long-term visioning study. As Councilperson Cashman mentioned, it's an opportunity to re-envision, reimagine this much loved corridor and really come up with something that will really make a difference for the neighborhood. So the opportunity, the end goal is that comprehensive multimodal plan, looking at safety, mobility, transit, and also environmental and green infrastructure improvements along the corridor. Why? I think this is pretty obvious if you're out there. Safety is an issue. We've got community and equity concerns, mobility and connectivity. We've got lots of transit riders. And so making the corridor better for them. If you've ever walked on Evans, you know that there's not a lot of green out there. So on hot days, it is very hot. And so there's an opportunity to green the corridor and also really to take a look at those the right-of-way issues and the utilities. Because if you walk out there, you know, there's utility boxes in the sidewalk and it really does get in the way and create safety issues. Next slide. How did we get here? You all have done a lot of previous work. The Evans Corridor has been in plan since 2002. More recently, Denver Moves Everyone, the Vision Zero Action Plan update. We are really capitalizing on work that was done on the Near Southeast Area Plan, which just finished. And one of the outcomes of that, in addition to that request by council people, was to study the corridor. It has been a known issue. And so this is an opportunity to take the work that you guys did, the good work you guys did, and really advance it and turn it into a vision, something that's actionable. Next slide. And for those of you who don't know the Near Southeast Area Plan, it is available on the Denver website, but that identified bike opportunities, which we'll be looking at a little more closely. Pedestrian opportunities, obviously crossing Evans is tricky. And so looking at maybe enhancing crossings at Dahlia and Holly. The plan identified transit improvements. And so the idea that while bus service is okay, there's things we could do better. And also looking at those bus stops, which if you've been at them, you know, are not the most hospitable places on the corridor. And then also that opportunity for green. It's something that's really important to the city. And so the opportunity or opportunities to identify landscaping, tree canopy, and green infrastructure, either in pockets or along the whole corridor. So all these ideas we're going to carry forward. Why are we here? We're introducing the project and welcoming you to our project team. We'll review work that's been done, obviously have time for discussion and feedback. There is a survey out there that will share information about how to get to, and then answer any questions you've got. And where are we? So we kicked this off this summer, and per the orange line, we are the Oh my gosh, end of 23, incredible. In our first public engagement meeting, we finished field reviews, which we started off doing in Q3. We've got an existing conditions report that'll be posted on the project website, hopefully this week. We did an analysis to talk about those opportunities and challenges, and this conversation we'll have tonight is a carryover of that. And then we're looking at beginning, purpose, need, goals, principles, things that are really going to guide the recommendation going forward. What have we done so far? I mentioned existing conditions analysis. That report will be out. We did a road safety audit. This corridor is on the high entry network, and it was important to understand base condition and they'll go into that a little bit more later in the meeting. But to make recommendations that really start to solve the safety problems that are on the corridor. We've begun, to draft safety goal, study goals and objectives. And really it's important to tie the recommendations back to those and weave them in throughout the process. And then the survey. And so if you haven't already done the survey, you can use that URL. So the bit.ly Evans Avenue study, it's also available just going to the Denver website. And if you're into QR codes, then feel free to snap one of those or both of those. It closes on December 15. So use it, fill it in, send it to your friends. Let's get as much feedback as we can, because that's really part of the base condition we look to gather as we develop recommendations. Next slide. All right, and so before I push it over to Eileen to talk about existing conditions, any questions on the process? There'll be plenty of time towards the end too, but feel free to jump in chat, raise your hand. However, if you've got a question for us.
And Liz, I'm going to ask you to go back to the previous slide, kind of to do a little bit of a transition and also to talk through what we're going to do today. Jennifer has mentioned this, that we have the existing conditions analysis done. It includes a road safety audit, which we'll explain in a few other slides, the draft study goals and objectives. So related to the survey, we're really diving into the study goals and objectives. And so we want you to do the survey, share it with your neighbors. This is posted on our website as well. This is where we kind of want that, I would say, collective effort and input from the community, as well as today. I'm going to go through existing conditions to have that shared understanding and knowledge. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms to dive in a bit more. So while we have our knowledges, experiences, expertise, and have performed audits and field visits, throughout the corridor over days and days, we want you, the community, we want your input. So we're going to be diving into that, having conversations after I go through existing conditions and the information from the road safety audit. But on that, we do want everyone to fill out the survey as well. So now we can start diving in. If you can move ahead 2 slides, I can go over existing conditions of the corridor. So one of the things that Jennifer mentioned is all of the work that the community and Denver has done kind of from that collective related to Evans and the surrounding community. So on that, we knew we weren't starting from scratch. And I also think that this study is pretty amazing in the fact that Near Southeast NPI, the Neighborhood Planning Initiative, just finished earlier this year, and now we're diving into one of the corridors that was recommended for multimodal safety and transportation and green infrastructure improvements. On that, these are the collective themes and as well as key takeaways that we gleaned from previous studies. So knowing we weren't starting from scratch, we had so much information. And so on that, with the survey and in the discussion today, we will dive in a little bit deeper to ensure that these really do match with the Evans corridor. And also, can we, have anything that's more specific to the corridor itself? Next slide. So the community assets. So I'm going to run through probably about a dozen slides that are visually maps, and I'll talk through them. I recognize there are many community assets. These, I would say, are the highlights. When it comes to the schools, the parks, as well as in purple, you'll see that consistent line. That's our study area of the roadway. Lacking parks that are immediately adjacent, yet there are neighborhoods. There are neighborhood parks in the area, but outside of this boundary. So the closest ones are going to be the Highline Canal, as well as you have KinderCare, Highline Academy, which is a charter school, Denver Academy as well on the south side. Again, recognizing there's other schools on the north, but are not in the area or like adjacent, immediately adjacent. So the food access, this different color coded map, as well as with the numbers, talk about the percentage of people. So 2 means 20% of the people living in this area have access, a 10-minute walk access to fresh food. And then in the blue on the south side of Evans, east of I-25, 30% have access to fresh food by walking 10 minutes. And then on the west side, you can see 40%, which is the greatest area, but the majority of the corridor, you can see kind of in the purple, only 20% have access to fresh food in a 10-minute walk shed. Next slide. Areas of need. And this is really something that Denver as a whole has taken to heart and is one of their prominent values in all of their planning efforts and everything they do. In the green, the number one, these are the highest priority areas that have the highest need to, I would say, ensure that we start raising the level of equity. So those are the highest ones in need. And you can see then the second and third tiers and the fourth. There's additional tiers. There's a 5 and 6 tier, which are kind of, again, they don't have any inequities and they did not show up on this corridor area. Next slide. Current land use. So you can see that there is a mix of land use. An area that is really, I would say, light is the residential. So there is mixed use. The residential is really behind the immediate corridor. And so on the corridor, you can see there's industrial as well as mixed use. And then you have this former chapter 9, and that goes back with a little bit of the residential. Again, lacking open space. You can also see the kind of regional center over to the west of I-25 that relates to the Colorado station for transit. Next slide is the future land use. So this relates to Blueprint Denver, which is the comprehensive plan for all the city of Denver. And while that everything kind of turns, a lot of this majority turns into this community corridor, has pockets of the community center related to the development happening on the southeast corner of Monaco Parkway and Evans, as well as that regional center, which you can barely see the difference. It is in that Colorado Station area. One thing to note, while this says community corridor, Denver, Blueprint Denver has identified Evans with a suburban context overlay, which is quite different than a downtown, a residential, or kind of that mixed use area. A suburban style context, that overlay on Evans, it does provide for a mix of uses of businesses and development. So it does not have to look exactly like the downtown area. Again, it provides both for that local and that regional access, which is important, again, from the city as a whole and the region. So I do want to recognize that in the general plan, it does identify that suburban context overlay for Evans Corridor. Next slide. The Denver right-of-way and private property. Overall, there are over 100 individual private properties. On that, the kind of the flip side is what, the question is what or how big is the Denver right-of-way related to the street itself and Evans Corridor. And when I say right-of-way, so sometimes we normally think of the vehicle lanes, just the driving of the curb to curb. It's actually what's outside of that includes the sidewalk area and possibly in certain spots, some amenity zone or that green infrastructure, or sorry, the green area. On that, it's very small and narrow when it comes to the actual right-of-way of what the roadway, including the sidewalk area is. It's 60 to 70 feet. And those private properties are very close and adjacent to the private properties, which leads to, I think, possibly the next slide where we start talking about the pedestrian space. You can go to the next slide, and the utilities. So you can see, again, some areas are extremely tight when you get from heading eastbound from I-25 to Layden. It is very narrow, and that's curb to curb, not even the right-of-way. We recognize some of the vehicle lanes in there as well don't even meet Denver standards. They are 8 feet. That is not a standard width of a vehicle travel lane, as well as Pontiac to Quebec is also pretty narrow too. Next slide. The green infrastructure. This map, while I really like all of the green around Evans, it's pretty far away. So one of the things is we really are lacking the green infrastructure and the tree canopy, as well as landscape or green spaces along Evans Avenue. We, as part of this, conducted a road safety audit. We were out in the field for 3 days in September, and on that north side of Evans, we walked it back and forth midday, morning and evening, and we just were begging for shade, and we got it west of I-25, and then a tiny spot, I believe it was right before Monaco. Otherwise, it was pretty desolate. The green infrastructure, as this continues, one of the things that I just mentioned is how myself and others were desperate people that use this every day. They can recognize this. Evans is in the top percentile of a hot street. It is one of the hottest streets in Metro Denver, and that again is very kind of from all of this map, all this information, you can see all the factors that play into it. We have no tree canopy. The sidewalks are right up against the road. There's no, again, room right now for even property owners. It's pretty kind of, again, asphalt parking lots right up to the sidewalks. So again, it is a hot corridor, and we recognize that. Next slide. Walking. While this map and the corridor itself, there is not that many missing sidewalks, yet from a map perspective, just looking at this, someone could say, oh, look at all the gray lines on this that says that there's a sidewalk. We recognize that the majority of these sidewalks on Evans are deficient. They are not ADA compliant. They are not ADA accessible. They also don't meet, again, kind of that clear pathway from minimum standards from Denver's Complete Streets guidelines. Next slide. These are also just visuals. Again, a lot of people that do walk the corridor, take transit and or access biking, again, experience this every day. Major barriers and hurdles where literally the sidewalk ends. So we recognize that is definitely a focus. And again, from previous planning recommendations, that this is a priority to improve walking and safety for pedestrians. Next slide. Biking, one of the things that has not been recommended is a bike lane or a bike facility on this corridor. It's recognized that pedestrians, transit, and safety and green infrastructure and green canopy is a priority, yet we want to ensure there are major bike routes and bike facilities that are north and south, that run north and south. So we need to ensure that there are safe crossings for the people biking. Next slide. Also, this is kind of a small interruption, is that there's a plug. If you feel like scanning this or typing in this bit.ly, Denver is updating their bike master plan. They have a survey open for comments. You can add comments to a map. It's a mapping exercise. So please feel free to head over there. Not right now, or maybe if you're bored, you can, but I hope not. Next slide. Transit, 5 bus routes, they interact as well, as I will say too, on the west end related to Colorado Station. CDOT, the bus stand, does interact as well. The busiest routes, really, again, kind of on that 30-minute headway for Route 21. Next slide. We recognize right now, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, the bus stops themselves are, to be honest, in dismal condition. They don't meet standards. They don't meet the guidelines, the design guidelines from RTD, as well as Denver, as well as some of the placements are not in the best spots. And you can see too, is a lot of these also, the bus stops are kind of on post and not necessarily clearly identified, so it can be confusing. And one thing related to transit, we did ride the bus a couple times east and westbound in kind of the, I would say, evening traffic rush hour. And one of the things that we did notice, and this relates to traffic, you can keep on the next slide, is that comparably driving a vehicle and riding a bus is very, very similar. It's within seconds that they are running both east and west in a similar pattern when it comes to traffic. So traffic control and kind of what we know from a vehicle standpoint, there's 11 signalized intersections. Next slide, 35 miles per hour. The vehicle volumes, I think the biggest thing about this, while there's tiny text, is that red box. So that's going to be our highest area of the amount of vehicles. There's almost 20,000 vehicles per day. They're hanging around their normal between 31 and 40 miles per hour. And you can see again, kind of related to the colors of boxes, is how many cars are traveling where and kind of to and from in what direction. So you can really see that constrained area from I-25 to Holly. Next slide. The crash analysis. So one thing, and I do want to recognize the importance of, while it was brought up as one of our goals, this Evans corridor specifically in this section is on the high injury network. What that means, Denver has committed to Vision Zero, is that they want to reduce the amount of people getting killed and seriously injured down to zero in the future. What this means, if it's on the high injury corridor, this corridor has a higher propensity of people getting killed and seriously injured, which is devastating for the community, devastating for our families and friends. And again, the ripple effect keeps going. And again, the idea is that we want to eliminate these and prioritize this. On that overall, looking at it from a 5-year perspective, there's 1,500 total crashes. And that may seem large, and it is, but we recognize that not all 1,500 of those are people getting killed or seriously injured. The west end of the corridor, you can see from this map, kind of that hot temperature, that's the highest number of crashes. And also another thing to note that we're definitely further investigating, over 60% of the crashes on this corridor, they occur at signalized intersections. So when we put kind of our street transportation hats on, this is some of the data we specifically look at. Next slide. Also too, you can start seeing on the all crashes, if you look on the left side where it says all crashes, 40% are rear end. And the right side where it says KSI, that's killed or seriously injured. So all of a sudden that data starts to look different when it comes to the crash types. Those are broadside, 30% are pedestrians, 17% are single vehicles, head on, rear end, side to side. So you can see the non-fatal crashes, you're at the rear end area, and the people that are getting killed and seriously injured, they have different types of crashes. Next slide. And again, some more information. 4 people have been killed. Again, this is just on the crash analysis of the last 5 years. 2 of them involve pedestrians. So that again starts when we think of people driving, if there's 20,000 cars per day carrying 1 or 2 people versus the people of walking and that are more vulnerable, again, have that immediate sidewalk next to the vehicle lanes, you can see then that it's more, they are vulnerable users and have a higher propensity to get killed or seriously injured. And next slide. And on that, one of the things related to it being on the high injury network, we completed a road safety audit. This really, the whole team was out there of professionals wearing, I would say, different lenses. What does it look like from a person driving? What does it look and feel like from a person walking, riding transit, bicycling at different times of day? We did this for 3 days, a whole team involved city staff as well, and had learned a lot from being out there. Next slide. And on that, some of the high level findings that are not surprising to people on the corridor that I've already mentioned. Travel lanes, some of them do not meet current standard widths of what Denver has. Utility poles, again, they are frequent, high, many, and they are in the middle of the sidewalk and kind of, again, do not provide that ADA compliance, as well as the curb ramps throughout the corridor. That also goes back with the driveways, which there's a high number, again, not ADA accessible or meeting that compliance. As well as, again, with those driveways, there's so many access points that to have that immediate adjacency of fencing and or kind of, I would say, deterrent to use, which is understandable, it's private property. Next slide. Also, too, high number of transit users, especially kind of, I would say, at the endpoints. the highest bus stops. The two I would say actually are at the end stops, Quebec, and then also at Colorado Station. Dahlia also has a robust amount of people there as well. I think a lot of these bullet points and kind of the pictures we've already addressed. Next slide. One of the things as well that was pointed out, I think in the first slide of the existing conditions is one of the community assets is the Highline Academy. It's a charter school just south of Evans on Dahlia. We also recognize, so through other studies, through a Safe Routes to School study effort by Denver, it was recognized and it kind of determined that Highline Academy, it's a tier 1. So it's a priority school in need of active transportation improvements. We also, again, related from our field reviews, and two, we recognize the circulation pattern for pickup and drop off is, trying to think of the word here. It causes a lot of congestion that bleeds out through the neighborhood and then on to Evans, causing some pretty, I would say, unsafe interactions and backup. Next slide. All right. So I think, and I'm gonna possibly cue in a teammate here. I believe, so again, as I mentioned, we are going to go and break into breakout rooms and dive into a bit more detail and have a conversation with everybody that's here attending this meeting. On that, we did want to provide space for questions and answer. And I would say these would be questions and that we want to provide answers that are clarifying some of the information or questions related to kind of, again, that the group can benefit from. So I'll stop talking. Anybody, I don't know how you can raise your hand here. I'm kind of blanking that out, but you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask questions if you would like. Looks like Bruce Baskett has raised his hand. You have found the feature that I have not.
Yeah.
All right.
I went looking. Did the group talk with the businesses along the corridor, and are they willing to buy into whatever may come up?
Sure. So one of the things, and I may ask Jennifer Bartlett, the Denver project manager, one of the things we are going to be doing is part of our engagement team. We did go walk and flyer the corridor. So we went door knocking to the businesses, dropped off information about the study effort. If we may have missed some that have not been there or weren't able to talk with them personally. So I recognize we may have not hit everyone on that. So one, we did get a lot of information and interest from the property owners and business owners, as well as we are working with one of the business associations to hopefully join a meeting with them in January, as well as to have, I would say, a focus group discussion with them to understand their perspective and kind of, again, understanding, and as well as their perspective of and future possibilities of change to Evans Corridor. So that is in our plan and process to do and continue. Jen, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you did great. I mean, well, okay, maybe a little. I mean, I think the business community is critical to the future of this corridor and how this thing evolves. So it's our intention to bring them along and really get that buy-in, because if we're going to do something to this corridor, it's not a quick fix. Let's just be honest. And so it will take collaboration and I think commitment to achieving whatever vision we come up with. So it'll be important to bring them along and continue to do so throughout the project and beyond, honestly.
Is it going to take buying right of way to get room for reasonable sidewalks and trees?
We certainly will have to explore it. I mean, looking at what's out there, I think one of the ways to achieve the vision is right away purchase or when something turns over. But yeah, it's one of the things we'll have to look at as the vision evolves and kind of what's it going to take to achieve that vision. And when I mentioned in the beginning, sort of the actionable plan, yeah, we can have this great vision with pretty pictures and whatnot, but what's it actually going to take to do it? And we're going to dive into that and come up with that support for the recommendations.
And if I could add, Bruce and Jennifer, one of the things as part of this process to realize a vision which goes back, and I don't think we want to go all the way back on the slide deck, related to our schedule and the process. We will be doing it, and it's, oh gosh, it's 3 A's, I have to say out loud, and alternatives analysis. On that, what that means is we're going to test, work with the community as well, get input, and then as well kind of do a qualitative and a quantitative analysis of what options we can do related to changing the roadway to meet these priorities. How do we make the pedestrian environment better? Is there a way actually that, is there, so again, looking at that existing right of way, we're going to put our big thoughts and brains together and figure out, again, 3 different alternatives. And we will consider right of way, but also be very conscientious, and that won't be in all alternatives. I think there definitely has to be one where we say, how are we going to meet the vision and goals of what this corridor, again, the community and what other previous plans have said, by working within the right of way.
I think Diane has a question, and then Councilman Cashman.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen within the current right of way. That was gonna be my question too. I mean, it's a third world country, that whole section. And you can't do it without more right of way. Plenty of lawsuits, I'm sure. And this will take, what, 6 years at least, I'm guessing. Wow.
Safe planning is a long
It needs to be tackled because it's a third world country and east of Colorado Boulevard, but not west of Colorado Boulevard. So good luck. I applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Cashman?
Yeah, I agree with Diane as far as the need for more right of way and the challenges that always brings with it. But the one thing, and I did put a note in the chat, I hope we take a look at the old RTD right of way north of behind the shops on the north side of Evans from around Dahlia to Monaco as a possible bike connector.
Thank you.
It's now just, as I said, it's abandoned and used on and off by members of our homeless population.
Julia, looks like you have your hand raised. Julia?
Yeah, my question is, how do you plan on getting input from the community, knowing that this is a area, a high equity area, and a lot of these people are not going to work the regular schedules that you would normally get a hold of somebody at?
Sure, and I'm going to tag in one of my teammates. Let's see if Heidi or Sherry want to talk through that.
Yeah, Eileen, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Heidi Agler, I'm with Root Policy Research. We supported the Near Southeast Plan with community engagement. And what we do is we work with cultural navigators to host meetings with people who are typically underrepresented or underrecognized in these types of processes. And we do very targeted outreach. So we actually have a meeting, we're scheduling meetings starting with the African Community Center. There are a lot of refugees and immigrants who live in the affordable housing along the corridor, and they use the corridor to get to jobs. In schools, their kids attend George Washington, attend Place Middle School. And so we've engaged a cultural navigator. That will be our first series of focus groups to understand the perspective of the corridor, to understand their perspective in navigating the corridor. Other target groups we're looking at are people with disabilities, lower income seniors. And so we do really specialized engagement to make sure that we're hearing those voices. And typically those take the form of small resident focus groups.
Perfect. So they will be scheduled around when those individuals are more likely to be off of work,
Yeah, we actually
even
do
if
it on
it's
weekends.
outside
Mhm.
of
Yep.
normal business hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So the groups we did for the Near Southeast Plan, we held, my office is on Colfax. It's in the East Colfax neighborhood. We held meetings here at our office because we have a community room. We did those on Saturdays, maybe on a Sunday. We provided childcare. So we were trying to hit that sweet spot from a work perspective from when a lot of the men who attended the focus group work swing shifts at DIA. And so we were trying to do that sweet spot between before they're going to work, but when they've woken up and when the children don't need to nap. So we work with the navigators to help us understand those ideal timeframes.
Perfect. Thank you for answering in such detail.
You bet. And I also should say we have a native Spanish speaker who's one of our colleagues on site. And so she's available to jump in and provide interpretation and translation as we need it as well.
Eileen, I think we're at the time for our breakout rooms. If there aren't any questions in Q&A, would you like to do that next?
I believe so. I think I'm leading these slides, which sound great. So one of the things I want everyone, I'm really hopeful people will stay on. So our community discussion exercise. Sometimes we get intimidated. Sometimes we do a little stumbling with technical uses, which we saw earlier and experienced earlier, but nothing bad, nothing that we can't get through, is we are going to use Google Jamboards. Also, if you don't want to use the Google Jamboards, we're going to go into breakout rooms, so smaller groups. Right now, there's just under 40 people, 35, so there'll probably be about 10, 15 per group, so we can have, again, a better conversation and discussion. And we really are going to dive into and understand and talk through what are barriers that need to change. Also, too, what are things we want to keep? What are things that are important to the community on the corridor, or kind of even related to that vision and things like that? And then also start kind of teasing out what the future of Evans can look like, as well as with priorities. So we're going to right now, and Vanita and others, you'll have to help me out. I believe everyone is going to be assigned a breakout room.
Correct.
And they'll kind of get moved over to those pretty quickly. And then myself, and then Jen Bartlett, and I believe Heidi will be each leading a breakout room. And we'll be using a Google Jamboard. We'll put links in the chat, and you can link if you're at your home computer. It's going to be really easy. You can add, we already have Post-it notes. So essentially we're trying to do a virtual, I would say, in-person sticky note exercise where you can add comments. And on that, again, don't feel as if you have to do the Google Jamboard. You can discuss it and we will take your notes as well.
Yeah.
Vanita, I see a couple other slides in the next couple ones. Did you want me to talk through those?
I think we are
Let's do that.
actually, want to do that?
Yeah. So related to the survey and related to the discussion groups, these are comments that have already come in from the survey. A lot kind of, again, I have a feeling what we're going to hear and see at our discussion groups. This is related to green infrastructure, and obviously we understand the lack of that. Next slide. Walking. Again, people that like myself have experienced it walking to take transit as well as biking in this. So we can, again, visually see and as well as provide some of the comments. Next slide. Related to biking, recognizing as well that there's, again, what was mentioned and noted, there's a lot of north-south, very important bike routes and corridors or bike facilities. So it's really important to keep those connected and to prioritize those. Next slide. And transit. And I think this goes back with, again, the existing conditions is the comfort and safety, as well as the bus stops. Those are the big input that we've been hearing. All right. So I think we've got everything here that I just explained. So I think I explained things beforehand. And on that, I think we're ready to head to the breakout rooms, Vanita?
Yes. So my colleague Heather's going to hit the button like she did just now, and we're going to go to our breakout rooms. We'll see you on the other side.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I feel like we just got jolted out of kind of spatial reality from one room to the other, mid-conversation or, so recognize, we heard you. On that, I hope everyone's, breakout rooms and discussions, went well. On that, I think we have just one more slide to share with everybody.
Yeah, why don't I just, Eileen, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your engagement in the rooms. I know ours was a great discussion and I really look forward to how this carries through. We'll be able to share the feedback out with you at a later date. So important dates coming up. So that survey closes December 15. So share widely. We are really looking at incorporating feedback. And I know Eileen shared the link to the bike plan update. Just know that we're using that feedback too. There've been some interesting comments in that on that map. And so we're looking to get that feedback from as many vantage points as possible. And then looking at the new year, this is our first meeting, definitely not our last meeting. We've got touch points and then focus groups, which are a little bit more of those focused, as it says, conversations with different groups. We will take all of this and come up with recommendations and opportunities, looking at really what those alternatives are, the pros and cons of those, before we can kind of bring anything back to you. And then in March, yay, 2024, meeting number 2. So we'll bring you back improvements and recommendations. I think that one is likely to be in person, but regardless, we'll have the boards and information for you available. And another plug for my survey. So click that QR code, email me. That is totally fine. I'm happy to take the feedback. So Jennifer Bartlett, denvergov.org. We do have a page up on the Denver website that we're keeping current with stuff. So feel free to use that. That's also a place, if you add your email, that we can sign you up to our mailing list. But again, survey links, email me. We really want that feedback and it will inform what we do next. And that is it. So again, thank you for hanging on with us. I know we've lost a few people, but we really appreciate it. We look forward to the next interactions and we'll keep you posted. Anyone else, anything to say before we close out for the evening?
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, everyone, with that, have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank